I wait for the Lord. My soul waits. In his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than those who watch for the morning. More than those who watch for the morning. I wonder if David wrote that years later, remembering his days as a shepherd sitting by the fire, watching the sheep that he was caring, ready to fend off marauding animals, longing for the first light to break. In my youth, I worked on some Canadian Naval Auxiliary vessels, and I at one point had to stand the 12 to 4 watch in the middle of the night in the dark and the cold, looking for objects that might not appear on radar, longing for the breaking of the dawn. I hated that watch. And I was in no danger of marauding animals, or, as some sailors long before me were, torpedoes. Do you and I long for Jesus? Wait for Jesus with that kind of longing. In the gospel today, we see 2 instances of people acting out of the deep longing of their heart for Jesus. First was Jairus, the synagogue leader whose daughter is ill. Jairus fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, it says. Not just one request, over and done. Begged him repeatedly. Come lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live. A fearless request. Jairus did not question Jesus' ability or power. He only begged for Jesus to change his itinerary, to come and lay hands on his daughter. Remember the centurion who did a similar thing and said, Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you. You don't have to come to my house. Just speak the word, and my servant will be healed. That centurion and the synagogue ruler fearlessly trusted Jesus' authority over illness. Fear had no chance to erode their longing for Jesus. When the woman with the hemorrhage approached Jesus in the anonymity of the crowd, with her burqa no doubt pulled down over her face, approaching from behind him, she doesn't fear Jesus. She has no fear that causes her to doubt. But she would have been afraid of the crowd around her. She was unclean. It was against the law for her to be there. She knows that if she can just have some contact with Jesus, she'll be healed. She's desperate. Her life's on hold. Other than this brave day, she probably hasn't left her house. She wasn't allowed to. She has to push past her fear of the laws and conventions of the day to get to Jesus. Her longing is deep. Her faith is fearless. Jesus sends her on her way, free not only of her ailment, but free of her fear of the community. In Jesus, her longing for healing was fulfilled. Sometimes I wonder if the church's longings have become too small. What is it we long for? A balanced budget? Bums in the seats? Children to come to our church? When really our real longing is for the healing and truth of Christ. Perhaps some of our fear around our faith is fear of having to take responsibility, fear of admitting what God has done for us, fear of admitting how truly important Jesus is in our lives. In our fear, we cling to our control, and in trying to save our life, of course, we lose it. We look at churches around the country desperately trying to save their life, but they're losing it. We need the courage to push through the crowd, to go against the conventions of the day so that we can touch the healing power of Jesus' love. At the recent diocesan conference, Bishop Anna quoted Teilhard de Chardin's image of Christianity as a tree too big to keep in a pot. The church being the pot. And she pointed out that this pot is cracked. It's broken down, it's inadequate, and we find ourselves pouring energy and money into trying to fix the pot. While God, in the meantime, is busy tending the tree of faith in God anywhere and everywhere outside the pot. Bishop Anna pointed out how ludicrous it is to imagine some of our great old-growth cedars and firs and spruce being potted. No pot big enough. In this very secularized part of the world, it is said that there is more genuine spiritual practice and compassion to be located outside this pot we call church than there is within it. That deep spirituality connected to the earth and the environment and the natural beauty around us was the kind of spirituality that was the day-to-day practice of the First Nations people. Before we arrived from Europe and tried to tame that spirituality into the garden pots that we call churches and parishes. We came here thinking we had much to teach them, but they had much to teach us, and still do. So last Sunday we were given copies of the letter that Bishop Anna wrote in the latest Faith Tides digital magazine regarding Canada's failure in the journey of reconciliation with First Nations peoples. Her letter, if I may be so bold, is required reading for all members of this diocese. Otherwise, why bother having a bishop? If you haven't already, go to the Faith Ties webpage and read all that is there from our bishop and also from the Reverend Marvin Underwood about his painful journey as an Indian day school survivor and his recent challenges with the government's compensation application process. My sisters and brothers, this is the point where, to use a contemporary image, the rubber hits the road. Are we going to be the church that tries to embody faith in words only, focusing on fixing the pot? Or do we have the deep longing for Jesus that will propel us to push through the crowd so that we can join the Jesus movement outside these walls? The passage we heard from St. Paul's second letter to Corinth was actually about sending donations, financial donations, to the churches of Jerusalem. But his challenge was the same as Bishop Anna's challenge to us regarding the journey of reconciliation we say we are on with our First Nations. Now finish doing it, Paul says, so that your eagerness may be matched by completing it according to your means. And note, according to your means, do what you can, not what you can't. Will it be words only, mouthed at the beginning of every service? Or are we ready to pour ourselves out, to take up action, to do what we can, to push on in the journey of reconciliation? Bishop Anna points out that the Yellowhead Institute, monitoring the progress of the 94 calls to action, published in 2015, nearly 10 years ago, states that none of those calls to action were completed by 2023. How many letters have I written to my elected officials about this? I'm ashamed to say, none. I suspect many of you have written. We can all write letters. We can all make our longing for justice known. I certainly need to do more. As Bishop Anna says, reconciliation is hard work. Care has to be real. Just to take one example, why are over 70 First Nations across our country still without clean water in their taps? Whose responsibility is it to overcome this broken system? Surely it's a shared responsibility, shared by politicians who are paralyzed the moment they feel an action will fail to bring them votes. By voters who must make their voices heard clearly and repeatedly so that politicians have no choice but to see that those clean water facilities should be put in place. Engineers and contractors who install the systems must adapt their procedures to the real context of First Nations with respect and dignity and patience. I suggest that this entire broken system will change when we speak up with real longing for God's justice and healing by letters, in our conversations outside these walls, even if it isn't popular. Even if the crowd around us, including our own friends and families, try to elbow us out of the way. I believe it's true to say that the greatest weakener of our faith is our fear. Well, friends, I'm here to tell you all those faith-weakening types of fear that paralyze us are cast out by God's perfect love. We love God with all our heart, and so there is no room for fear in our intentions, our motives. We love God with all our soul, and we're filled with a sure and certain hope that things can change. There can be a newness of life. We love God with all our minds, so we educate ourselves, we read, we think things through, we discern right from wrong. And we love God with all our strength, with all our actions, all the power at our disposal, whether it be our careers or our prayers or our time or our money or our writing of letters. And yes, because we love our neighbors as we would want to be loved ourselves, we call for justice, refusing to be silent in the face of wrong. Do we long for Jesus Christ's healing presence so much that we can push through the crowd to touch his robe, to ask him to come to our nation, to lay hands on whatever or whomever needs healing? Surely we long for Christ's healing and justice more than those who watch for the morning. More than those who watch for the morning.